from Burlington this morning. I'm a member of the Hamilton-based Never Again group, about which you will hear a little more this afternoon. This entire project is mainly the brainchild of the remarkable spark plug of a man, Mark Vandermaas. We have a great deal to get through this afternoon, so I'll start right in with our first two speakers. Mary Lou Ambrogio is the Vice President of the Canadian chapter of the International Free Press Society, a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization whose mission it is to promote free speech principles across Canada and the world at large, through seminars, conferences, books, film, and music. The Society defends individuals and organizations that are being persecuted for having stood up for free speech. The Canadian chapter of the International Free Press Society, for example, has brought Ann Coulter, Philippe Carsanti, Kurt Vestergaard, Geert Wilders, and Bat Yor to Canada. Reverend Joe Campbell serves as the National Director of Development for Christians for Israel Canada, which is headquartered in Brantford, Ontario. He is the acting pastor right here for Royal View. Joe graduated from Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario, with a chemical engineering degree and worked for 13 years as a military, then commercial pilot, flying jets. He obtained his Master of Divinity degree and was ordained into the ministry in 1982. Joe has served in key leadership positions of several national and regional organizations. He and his wife, Vicky, serve in volunteer leadership positions in the church they now attend in London, Ontario. Thank you, Reverend, for allowing Royal View Church to be used for today's event. And now over to Mary Lou and Joe, in whatever order you please.
Hi, thanks everyone. I'm going to begin by saying I'm totally unprepared for today. We had an exciting week last week with, with Lord Christopher Monkton, another person who is vilified for speaking what he believes is the truth. The would-be censors keep us terribly busy defending people like this. And now, as an organization dedicated to freedom of speech, it's hard not to notice that Israel, supporters of Israel, and anything to do with Israel is a frequent target of the censors. When enemies of free speech target an entity so mercilessly, you know there's a reason for it, even if you don't always understand why. As defenders of free speech, you intuitively feel an urge to defend that target. So that's why we're here today. And it's certainly a start, if not in understanding, then in simply fighting back, which is the first step. By standing up and saying we see the lies of the Israel Apartheid Week movement and demanding an opportunity to tell the truth as we see it, we begin. But there's so much more to do. In their obsession with Israel, they reveal much about themselves. Yet this is so much bigger than Israel and the mess in the Middle East. Free speech this is a highly concerted effort by those who want to destroy the West, who want to destroy the capitalist system and end our liberal democratic notions of the supremacy of the individual, only to replace it with their collectivist visions. We should be alarmed at the international efforts that are taking place to make criticism of Islam a criminal offense, because that would essentially mean that we wouldn't even be able to have these kinds of discussions we're having here today anywhere. This is why preserving our freedom of speech is so important. And I'm honored and blessed to have met and come to know many of the brave and honorable souls who involve themselves in these issues, like the people who will speak today. They are the courageous men and women who say what they believe is true while knowing that they will be vilified and attacked for saying what is in their hearts and minds. Despite the threats, what they have to say is so critical that they refuse to be cowed into silence. It is for them, for these brave and courageous people of conviction, that we all gather today and add our voices to theirs to let them know they are not alone. So thank you for your presence here, and thank you for all you do to stand up for the truth and maintain our right to speak it. And now, Reverend Campbell.
It's good to be here, and I just wanted to welcome everyone. and again to say thank you to Royal View Church for the use of the facilities. I am not the acting pastor here. I'm full-time with Christians for Israel, but I do attend here. And so it's been good to be able to welcome you, and looking forward to this afternoon and this evening. And hopefully we'll get, this evening will be a good representation from across not only our city, but even our area. And I just want to say that Christians for Israel, I know that sometimes the Jewish people in our community are sort of mystified at the fact that I am a pastor, former pastor. I'm not pastoring right now. And for 6.5 years, I am a national director. I get paid to go around to churches to help them to understand why they should pray for Israel, care for Israel, support Israel, and love Israel. And so Jewish people go, you get paid to support Israel and the Jewish people? And I say, yes, because the church, my major focus in Canada is to reach the church in Canada, to help them to understand, because of the tremendous media distortion of what's really happening in Israel, and what the whole area of Israel and the Jewish people, what they represent. And so that is a major focus. Now, we also, in Christians for Israel, we also have projects that we do just to support and love the people, and the Jewish people. So today, it is a great, thank you, Mark Vandermaas, for putting this together. And we're working in cooperation. There are different groups working in cooperation. I am hoping, this is my concluding remark here, is that we will continue to do this, and in the future, we'll bring in groups that partner together to bring forth the truth, and to be able to have this whole thing, especially with the media, be brought to a place where God is honored and where people are honored. And so I'm looking forward to the various videos and the speakers and whatever the program is bringing. So thank you for being here today, and we look forward to seeing this continue. This is a first, I hope, of a whole series that will follow in years to come.
Thank you, Mary Lou and Joe, for those words of welcome. It's fitting, I think, that we hear right off the top from the organizer of today's event, Mark Vandermaas, who has served with the United Nations peacekeeping force in the Middle East, where he personally saw the remnants of war. His parents suffered under Nazi occupation in Holland and watched Jews taken away to be murdered. The memory of being told this as a child haunts Mark to this day. After Mark and his friend Gary McHale were arrested in 2006 while attempting to raise a Canadian flag in Caledonia, Ontario, an incident detailed in Christy Blatchford's wonderful book, Helpless, which I recommend to everyone, Mark put his innovative real estate career on hold to become a full-time, volunteer, rule of law activist, working to bring a permanent end to race-based policing in Ontario. Now, that issue might seem to have little relevance to some of us, but Mark has effectively argued to people like me that issues in Caledonia represent a sort of Petri dish preview of what is likely to occur in the province on a broad scale. Please welcome the indefatigable Mark Vandermaas.
My wife is going to think I'm getting a swelled head. I've got to be really careful here, all these nice things. I'm not used to people saying nice things about me. For 5 years, people have been smearing me as a white supremacist racist for speaking out for innocent people in Caledonia, so this is a really nice change. Thank you. My parents lived under Nazi occupation in Holland. My father escaped from a Nazi work camp. They did see Jews taken away, and one of the most important lessons I learned from the Holocaust is the owner's duty we all have as human beings to speak out against injustice, especially when it does not affect us directly, especially. I did not become a full-time activist, however, until December 16th, 2006. That was the day, if we could, next slide. That was the day when I, along with a man named Gary McHale, our keynote speaker for this afternoon, were in separate jail cells after being arrested for indeed trying to place Canadian flags on hydro poles in Caledonia. About 1.5 hours from here, just south of Hamilton. Our goal was to dramatize the existence of racial policing, and boy did we ever manage to do that. The story of this, our first arrest, Gary's been arrested 6 times, me only twice, I've got to catch up, is recounted by National Post investigative reporter Christy Blatchford in her book entitled Helpless, Caledonia's Nightmare of Fear and Anarchy and How the Law Failed All of Us. Next slide, please. It's not my intent to recount the complete story of the Caledonia crisis, only enough to help you understand the role that our work there played in our decision to speak out for Israel, and why those who care about Israel and her values should care very deeply about your neighbors in Caledonia. For those who do want more information about the Caledonia crisis, including some of the material that I'm going to be presenting in a few minutes, you can write this address down. It's called Helpless, www.helplessbyblatchford.ca, helplessbyblatchford.ca, and click on the No More Nightmares link at the top. Next slide, please. In addition to being an original co-founder of Canadian Advocates for Charter Equality with Gary McHale and several others, I'm also the founder of the Caledonia Victims Project. The image of the dancer in my logo is a tribute to a 14-year-old girl named Pam Dudich who loved to dance before her world turned upside down in 2006. Next slide. Pam lives on the 6th line in Caledonia, and the police, the OPP, withdrew policing service from her street for 47 months, beginning on April 20th, 2006, after hundreds of Native militants occupied them, attacked police while they were trying to enforce a court order. Police were injured after being attacked with clubs, crowbars, axes, a chainsaw, and socks filled with rocks. The raid was supposed to end an illegal occupation of a brand new subdivision across the street from Pam's house called the Douglas Creek Estates, and the occupation began on February 28, 2006. Lawlessness escalated over time as it became clear to the occupiers that they were absolutely immune from the law. So we go, next slide. Sam Galtieri, beaten, he has permanent brain damage after beating. Next slide. That's a road, main highway through Caledonia, vehicle being thrown over. Next. That's a sacred tire fire in the middle of the main road in Caledonia. Protectors of the environment. Next. That's a bridge that was burned down while the police refused to, the occupiers were threatening to shoot the firefighters. So the police told the fire department they couldn't protect them, so the fire department had to watch it burn. Next. That's the hydro station that was destroyed. They happened to burn a pickup truck that was run through the gates, and you can see the picture at the top. Caledonia was without power. I think it was 3 days all told. Next. Security guard's car, they poured gasoline on the car while the security guard was inside the car and told him if he didn't want to die to get out of the car. He did. Next. You can see them throwing debris onto the blocked highway down below. If you look at the end of the bridge there, you can see, you can barely make out an OPP police car while it's going on. Next. These are masked occupiers. They roamed at will throughout the neighborhood. They attacked people. They were drunk. It was just insane. They were in complete control. The police absolutely refused to enforce the law. Next. There you go. We were in Hamilton last night. Ben Pfefferman, a film producer, he's a student. He talked about how some anti-apartheid groups were setting up phony Israeli checkpoints at university campuses to dramatize, the evils of Israeli apartheid. That's about an hour. That's an hour and a half from where we are right now. Okay, blocked for 4 to 5 weeks, I think it was. Thank you. It's difficult to convey to you the absolute terror, hopelessness, trauma, and sense of betrayal the people of Caledonia feel to this day. Perhaps it's enough to tell you that Pam Dudich must take medication and go to counseling. Pam's mother takes medication for a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress syndrome, and she has attempted suicide twice. Pam's father's had a heart attack. The family business is in ruins, and they can't leave because they can't sell their house. Next, please. Six Nations people have been unintended victims of the racist OPP policing policies that allow illegal occupations to escalate and the sites to become lawless home-free zones, as residents in Ipperwash and Caledonia have called them. Occupation sites have seen rapes of Native women, assaults, arson, drug use, and gun violence, including a Native man who had a hole blown through his arm because the police would not intervene. Next, please. Caledonia, this is where now you're saying, okay, tell me about Israel. This is the part. Caledonia is a national security issue. I presented this version of this presentation in Ottawa. Beforehand, I met with David B. Harris, who is former CSIS director, and he was absolutely shocked about what you're about to see now. Next, please. Tom Kiefer. What's never been admitted publicly by the OPP or the Ontario government is that Native militants are being aided by a coalition of anarchists, radical unionists, and anti-Israel groups led by an anarchist named Tom Kiefer from Local 3903 of the Canadian Union of Public Employees at York University. Kiefer was once kicked out of Concordia University after he threatened a campus security guard who had arrested Leith Marouf, the son of a Syrian diplomat who had been caught spray painting anti-Israel slogans, or anti-Semitic, depending on your perspective, on a wall. He was allowed back in after he made an apology. Now, Tom Kiefer and CUPE 3903, with help from other locals, from CUPE, CAW, OPSU, CEP, the United Steelworkers, began supporting Native radicals in Caledonia after the failed OPP raid of April 20th that I just told you about when police were attacked. By this time, according to OPP testimony, the site was taken over by the Mohawk Warriors, which the police considered to be, quote, akin to the Hells Angels. It's a group that was involved in organized crime, cigarette running, with a reputation for physical confrontation and access to guns, including assault rifles. Next, please. The Warriors murdered Quebec Police Corporal Marcel Lemay in Oka, and they were in Ipperwash during the violent takeover of the Canadian Forces base there, which led to the death of Dudley George, and years of intimidation of innocent residents. Now, Kiefer and CUPE also work with the anarchist Black Cross Federation and the Fredonia Anarchist Foundation, which has donated money to support CUPE activities in Caledonia. Next, please. This is my favorite picture. This is the Palestinian flag flying on the occupied Douglas Creek Estates, along with the Mohawk Warrior flag. It was placed there by the Niagara Palestinian Association on May 3rd, 2006. Now, one of those present when the flag went up was a lady by the name of Jamila Gadar from McMaster University's Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights group. And on March 9th, 2008, at a McMaster University conference entitled, quote, "The Politics of Six Nations Palestinian Alliances in Caledonia," she waxed poetic about that day, and here's what she said. "In the months following, through cold and moments of exhaustion and worry, we would raise our eyes to the swaying of the flags and think, we are one, and the winds carry our colors together from Jerusalem to the Grand River." Now, in 2008, Jamila Gadar was a speaker at a protest in Toronto organized by the Coalition Against Israeli Apartheid. Now, the coalition's great claim to fame is that it, along with other anti-Semitic groups, sent delegates to the 2007 Cairo conference to meet with the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Mona Huwaidi of the Canadian Arab Federation was also a speaker at the McMaster Six Nations Palestinian Alliances conference, and the CAF is the organization that once petitioned the Canadian government to have Hezbollah and Hamas removed from the list of banned terror organizations. Next, please. This is Vice President of the Canadian Arab Federation, Ali Mala, in a 2006 protest, walking beside someone carrying a Mohawk Warrior flag and another carrying the portrait of that nice fellow, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. Now, Mala also attended the Cairo conference to meet with the terror groups, and he's a great friend of George Galloway as well. Next. This is another picture of Ali Mala with the Mohawk warrior flag. Next, please. This picture shows the warrior flag with a poster depicting the Israel Defense Forces as heartless murderers or intentionally dropping a bomb on a child, and a Jew as a hooded executioner. Now, another group active in supporting lawlessness in Caledonia is the Christian peacemaker teams. The UN has condemned the Hamas Charter for laying out, quote, a blueprint for jihadist terrorism directed at killing Jews and destroying the state of Israel, but the Christian peacemaker team's FAQ page for their Palestine mission portrays Hamas as a humanitarian organization. Next. Yeah, Tamil Tigers are in Caledonia too. Next. CUPE education workers, steel workers, Mohawk warriors together working to undermine the rule of law in Caledonia. Getting a sense of the players that are involved? Do they sound familiar? Next, please. The first Jewish group to come and stand with us in Caledonia was the Never Again group from Hamilton, of which Stuart is a member, in 2011. Actually, they're half Jewish and half non-Jewish. Last night, they held their first anti-IAW event at McMaster University, which was a fabulous success, and many of them are here today, and I think more are coming tonight, and I'm very, very grateful for their support. After seeing their pain and bewilderment at the Israeli Apartheid Week lies, as we began to work with them, I knew I wanted to organize an anti-IAW event, but my hand was truly, well and truly forced when I read an article in the Jewish Tribune in February about how Western University campus police refused to stop IAW supporters from shutting down an event organized by Israel on campus. Welcome to Caledonia on campus, right here in London. This could not go unchallenged. When we met with Avi Braemer of Israel on campus, he expressed his desire that Jewish students and families know they are not alone, that people in the community are willing to stand up for them and for Israel, and we're here. Now, the final straw for creating Israel Truth Week was a video I watched of an interview with Western University professor David Heap, who was asked by a fawning supporter about his experiences on the Canadian boat to Gaza. What do you say to the Zionists who raise the issue of Hamas rockets sent into Israel? His reply, they're just trying to deflect. Now, this outrageous response made me angry because I'd heard it all before. In Caledonia, where those responsible for the violence against innocent people have done their best for the last 6 years to deny the humanity of their victims by pretending they don't exist, all the while viciously attacking those of us who dared to speak up against them. It is supremacist ideology in its purest and most evil form to pretend that innocent victims of one race don't matter because the other race's cause is truly just. Now, where have we heard that before? Earlier in the video, David Heap quotes a native Canadian who was on the boat to Hamas with him, as I like to call it, as saying, quote, Gaza is the largest Indian reserve in the world and is oppressed ultimately by the same colonialist empire that we have oppressing indigenous peoples here. So he sees the unity of the struggles. I'm delighted that we're bringing Bob Lovelace here for Apartheid Week at Western, end of quote. Really? Gaza is an Indian reserve? Canada's part of a colonialist empire oppressing Palestinians? If that sounds off the wall, what about the native leaders who recently met with the Iranian ambassador in Ottawa? One of them is Terrence Nelson, who once famously said that the only way to deal with the white man is to pick up a gun and get between him and his money. Now I wonder, what sort of aid do you think they were looking for from Iran? So before closing, I hope you now better understand that when you help us fight for civil rights of non-Jews in Caledonia, who are the innocent victims of a small group of Native militants, and I stress small, it's not all Native people, it's a small group. You are also helping us defeat the sworn enemies of Israel who are trying to destroy everything you believe in right in your own backyard. Before closing, I can't name everyone for fear of leaving someone out, but I'd really like to thank the volunteers and the sponsors who helped make this day possible. Especially those who worked hard to distribute brochures to their own churches and others in the area, and of course for this wonderful venue. I really appreciate that from Reverend Campbell. He stepped right up when I told him what I wanted to do. He didn't hesitate even 1 second to say, I'm pretty sure this church will be open for you. And of course, we have other volunteers and guests and speakers and contributors here from London, Caledonia, Hamilton, Uxbridge, Boston, and we have somebody from Richmond Hill, some Christian people who drove all the way from Richmond Hill right in the front row. Thank you for that. And of course, I have to thank all of you for giving up your time to spend it here today. If just one of you leaves here today armed with just one fact that helps you reach out to just one person about what is truly happening in the Middle East and to your neighbors in Caledonia, this conference will have been a raging success. Thank you.